Hey, so yesterday I saw a video of a guy I used to know and lost contact with. And I think the video was like from a few years ago. But in his video, he was trying to teach that Zechariah chapter 12 was fulfilled in John chapter 19. And I need to debunk that. Okay. And, I'm going to tell you basically, the point he was trying to make. And basically, look, he tried to make this point here in verse 10 in Zechariah 12, where it talks about, and they shall look upon me whom they've pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son. Okay? And they're going to claim that, or he claims that this was fulfilled here in John 19, 37. Okay? And I'm going to show you that, if you just read the context of John 19, like if you just read the whole chapter and you read Zechariah 12, there's no way you can come to that conclusion. Okay. Now, this verse 37 and 36, I do think they're referring to Psalm 22. Okay, this is Psalm 22, and then here's verse 16. For dogs have compassed me, the assembly of the wicked have enclosed me. They pierce my hands and my feet. I tell them all my bones. They look and stare upon me. They part my garments among them. They cast lots upon my vesture. And it starts out famously in Psalm 22, right? My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Why art thou so far from helping me? From the words of my roaring, right? And here, look, where was the verses here about the piercing? Okay. The bones, the piercing, the parting the garment, the casting lots upon it, that's obviously has to do with the crucifixion of Christ and also leading up to the crucifixion, in regards to casting lots about his vesture and stuff. So these are the things that were fulfilled in John 19, not Zechariah 12. And I'm going to read, or I'm going to show you John chapter 19, the whole chapter. But first, I'm going to show you Zechariah 12, and actually, instead of me reading it, I'm gonna play some audio, and we're gonna follow along because I don't know who this guy is, but he's a better, out loud reader than I am. Okay, so.
The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, saith the Lord, which stretcheth forth the heavens, and layeth the foundation of the earth, and formeth the spirit of man within him.
We're going to talk about this.
Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. In that day, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse with astonishment, and his rider with madness. And I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah, and will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength in the Lord of hosts their God. In that day will I make the governors of Judah like an hearth of fire among the wood, and like a torch of fire in a sheath. And they shall devour all the people round about, on the right hand and on the left. And Jerusalem shall be inhabited again in her own place, even in Jerusalem. The Lord also shall save the tents of Judah first, that the glory of the house of David and the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem do not magnify themselves against Judah. In that day shall the Lord defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem, and he that is feeble among them at that day shall be as David, and the house of David shall be as God, as the angel of the Lord before them. And it shall come to pass in that day that I will seek to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. And I will pour upon the house of David and upon the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and of supplications. And they shall look upon me whom they have pierced, and they shall mourn for him as one mourneth for his only son, and shall be in bitterness for him as one that is in bitterness for his firstborn. In that day shall there be a great mourning in Jerusalem, as the mourning of Hadad-rimmon in the valley of Megiddon. And the land shall mourn, every family apart, the family of the house of David apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Nathan apart, and their wives apart, the family of the house of Levi apart, and their wives apart, the family of Shimei apart, and their wives apart. All the families that remain, every family apart, and their wives apart.
Okay, so if you paid any attention to what was just read, this obviously did not happen in John 19, okay? And we're going to go to John 19 in a bit, but let me point out some things for you to pay attention to. Right when I show you John 19. Okay. In John 19, did God seek to destroy all the nations that, come against Jerusalem? You're going to see that the answer is going to be no. Was every horse in Jerusalem, was every horse struck with blindness in John chapter 19? Okay. No. Even if you keep on reading in Zechariah, he's talking about that a day that's going to be the future, and how he's going to, plead. I think it was Zechariah 14 about how he's going to plead with them face to face. Maybe it was 13, but it's later on in Zechariah. And look, if you read Zechariah, you're going to come to the conclusion that God is not done with Israel, okay? And the guy that I used to know is trying to teach that Zechariah 12 is fulfilled in John chapter 19. He's trying to teach that because he looks up to Steven Anderson, and Steven Anderson and him believe in replacement theology, okay? And Steven Anderson also thinks that this was fulfilled in John 19, and the reason he teaches that is because, he basically thinks God's done with the physical Jew, so he has to allegorize a lot of stuff in the Old Testament, okay? And because he doesn't take it literally, right? Because look, if you read through Zechariah, and you take it literally, you're going to end up, when you get to chapter 14 towards you're going to conclude, oh wow, in the future, Israel's going to be saved. And if you're a replacement theologist, that goes against your doctrine. So you're going to have to make up stuff about Zechariah and like Romans 11 and stuff like that. Okay. So if you just read some of Zechariah chapter 12 in just even chapter 12, okay, just not even the whole, like even just chapter 12, you'll see that this is talking about clearly a future event, okay? You know, nations coming against Jerusalem and God seeking to destroy them, okay? The Valley of Megiddo, right? That's, you know, Armageddon. Every horse being smote with blindness. I mean, dude, like, that didn't happen in John 19. Okay? And this is Zechariah chapter 12 is the burden of the Lord for Israel. Okay? And because this is a future event, that in itself proves that God's not done with Israel. You know, so what happens in John 19? You know, Jesus is before Pilate. The soldiers put a crown of thorns on Jesus. They mock him. You know, the crowd yells, "Crucify him." Pilate's basically giving them chances to not basically change their mind, not crucify him, but the crowd is incessant. Okay. Pilate writes, right, Jesus of Nazareth, the King of the Jews. The Pharisees and stuff get mad. Or, you know, excuse me, the chief priests of the, you know, they get mad. Pilate's basically like, well, it's too late, okay? And then, well, they crucify him, they take his garments, okay? They cast lots, the scripture might be fulfilled, okay? Saying they parted my raiment, so that, you know, that's reference to Psalm 22, it seems like. You know, the vinegar prophecy is fulfilled. Other prophecies are fulfilled. Right, how not, you know, not a bone of his was broken. And then here it sounds like it's still talking about Psalm 22. But it's definitely for sure not talking about Zechariah 12. Okay. And it's pretty wild that people like Steven Anderson, etc., have to like completely twist like a third of a verse in Zechariah chapter 12 to try to negate what Zechariah 12 clearly says and what 13 and 14 says. And, you know, just because he basically doesn't like Jews and wants to teach that God's done with Israel. And you know, look, and sometimes you buy a Bible and they have verse references, and I think most of the Bible publishers that have, like, I think most of them aren't necessarily trying to do this with malintent. I think they're just lazy. But some, like, if you have a Bible, if you have certain, you know, certain copies of the Bible from different, you know, from certain publishers that have references, when you get to Zechariah, or excuse me, when you get to John 19:37, they're going to reference Zechariah 12:10, okay? But it's your job to not be lazy and to read whole chapters and look at the context and study the context, okay? Because obviously they reference the wrong thing. Okay. Let me see if I could find where God's talking about how he's going to plead with Israel, like face to face. Oh, but okay, towards the end of 13, he's talking about a third of them's going to be his people, basically going to be saved. Okay. That's the remnant. Okay, and look, this is continuing from Zechariah 12 and 13, obviously, and, God's talking about gathering all the nations against Jerusalem to battle, and then he's going to go fight those nations, okay? That wasn't fulfilled in John chapter 19. Okay. I forgot how it's worded, but there is a thing where God is going to plead with them, face to face. I can't remember off the top of my head where it was. I'm trying to look for it. I just might have to mention it in another video. Find it later. But anyways, look, this is your brain on replacement theology, okay? You're going to take a third of a verse out of a chapter, completely out of context, because you don't even want to look up one verse that, above the verse that you're going to take a third out of context, okay? You don't even want to look up one verse that was before it, saying, "And it shall come to pass in that day I will seek to destroy all nations that come against Jerusalem." Because you don't want to believe that God's not done with Israel. Because you hate Jews, or say, it's irrational, and it's actually satanic. Because there's so many things in the Bible proving that God's not done with Israel, in both the New and the Old Testaments. And there's even prophecies about Israel that haven't been fulfilled yet, future prophecies. And if you deny those prophecies, or if you deny Romans 9, 10, and 11, if you deny some stuff out of Revelation, like, you're calling God a liar. Okay. And if you're going to get weird and start allegorizing God's promises to the nation of Israel, what other stuff in the Bible are you going to start to allegorize? You know what I mean? I want nothing to do with it.